think that. The only thing I'm buying is, probably just got to watch out for the cheap shots and the dirty hits and all the things that he likes to teach. That's pretty much all we got to watch out for. Other than that, I expect the same. Too high safety. I don't expect much man-to-man. I don't expect none of that. I mean, if I was a coach, I would never teach what he teaches, but that's just him and what he does. So there's no real getting under my skin anymore.
That's Odell Beckham Jr. with comments about Jets defensive coordinator Gregg Williams, who had been the defensive coordinator and interim head coach in Cleveland. And it was 2 years ago in August when the Giants played in Cleveland, Big Cat, for a preseason game that Odell Beckham Jr. suffered a sprained ankle, eventually a broken leg during the regular season. That's what he's referring to. Gregg Williams, then the defensive coordinator in Cleveland, had his players go after Beckham in a preseason game. And this is the key to me, and this is the thing that I think cries out for something more, investigation or something by the NFL, because Beckham said this: I had players on this team telling me that that's what he was telling them to do. Now, I thought all this went away with the bounty scandal, and I know the bounty scandal focused on offering guys money to try to incapacitate opponents, but still, if you have a coach who is telling his players to try to incapacitate opponents, that becomes a problem. That becomes an issue. If you're watching on TV, a guy going in low, a guy going in hot on Odell Beckham Jr. and injuring that leg, I have a feeling this is not the end, but just the beginning with Odell Beckham Jr. speaking out.
Hold on, Mike. You just told me that you thought that this all went away with Gregg Williams with the bounty gate and everything. You thought that Gregg Williams would change the type of football coach he is? Come on, grow up. Grow up, Mike. Of course Gregg Williams is still doing this. I don't think it's right. I think it's actually very bad. But Gregg Williams has been coaching football for however long it's been, decades and decades and decades. He coaches in a specific style. He's been basically coaching for every single team in the NFL, it feels like. He rubs people the wrong way, and he has guys go out there and try to hurt the opponent. I mean, that's just when you get Gregg Williams on your defense, when you have him run your defense, you have to know that that's probably going to happen. He's also probably going to coach them up and play an aggressive style of defense that does well and gets results. But that's part of the equation here when you're talking about Gregg Williams.
Well, look, he wouldn't be in the NFL again after everything that went down in the bounty scandal, including him submitting an affidavit saying that Jonathan Vilma did indeed offer $10,000 to anyone who knocked Brett Favre out of the NFC Championship game a decade ago. I thought he was done at that point. I thought that was a bridge he could not walk back across. But he is a good coach. Here's the thing, though. Since he's been back, he hasn't been accused of this kind of stuff. We haven't heard the cartoonish quotes like he had in the locker room before the 49ers and the Saints played in the playoffs several years ago, and he was talking about kill the head and the body will die and go after Frank Gore and go after this and go after that. That has not resurfaced until now. So I didn't know whether he was behaving or whether he was just being very discreet. It sounds like he was being very discreet, but apparently not discreet enough because it got back to Odell Beckham Jr., and now apparently Williams due to meet with the media on Friday. He's not the kind of guy that you're going to scare into not going after you. I don't know what OBJ's strategy is in bringing this to light 3 days before a game against Gregg Williams, but it's not going to get Gregg Williams to back down.
No, you're right. Gregg Williams will definitely take this personally. Whether he did it or not, he will take it personally, and he will look for revenge with his scheming and his defense. And I think I lean more to the discreet side, Mike. I think Gregg Williams has a style that he's going to coach. It's an aggressive style. He gets a lot out of his players, and he gets players to hit the opponent in a physical way that you don't always see with defensive coordinators. You see some teams, they don't gang tackle the same way as other teams. You see some teams don't have that physical presence that Gregg Williams defenses do have. So it probably wasn't overt, but it definitely has still been going on. And Odell Beckham coming out and saying this is no surprise to me.
And Big Cat, this is one of the great disconnects in football because there are strategic advantages to be gained by incapacitating key members of the opposing team with clean, legal hits. Sam Darnold's incapacitated by mono. That helps the Browns. If someone else can't play, if Le'Veon Bell ultimately has a setback with his shoulder and can't play, that helps the Browns. And Browns defensive players, I guarantee you, will be testing the shoulder of Le'Veon Bell, because if you can test it in a way that causes it to fail, that is an advantage to the Browns. That's part of football. And clean legal hits that will cause the opponent to not be able to play. That's been part of the game since they first invented it, right? Get the best players off the field any way you can as long as you stay within the boundaries of the rules. But nobody's allowed to talk about that anymore. I mean, it's just a weird reality where it is part of the game. But you know what? If you embrace that, Jimmy and Johnny aren't going to be allowed to play by mom and dad. And I think the NFL tries to stay away from that as much as they can. But here it is front and center again, thanks to Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah, I agree. And Gregg Williams is an old school coach who coaches in a different manner from a different era of the NFL. And that's kind of my bigger point is Gregg Williams isn't going to change. He's not going to all of a sudden become a new type of coach. He's learned football a certain way. He's going to coach football a certain way. And this is going to be part of football until the Gregg Williams era type guys are long gone.
I thought when he went shoe polish in the goatee, that meant he had changed. Would you do that? Would you do shoe polish in the goatee?
No, that means he's guilty. When you change your hair or anything, that's usually a sign of guilt.
We'll be back with more right after this.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.